Alright, hello guys, and today I'm going to be talking about a game. This game is Resident Evil. Now you all know what Resident Evil is. Specifically, it's a horror game series, and we had an installment not that long ago. So I'm gonna be summing up the entire series from start to finish in the form of a documentary. So let's go. In 1996, Resident Evil released by Capcom. However, Capcom didn't first release this game. In fact, they actually started off with Street Fighter, Mega Man, and some other titles. Originally, Resident Evil, though, was supposed to be based off of a Japanese horror game that only released in Japan called Sweet Home. Sweet Home was a 2D game because it released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1989. This game was filled with game elements that were horror themed, and so the company decided years later in 1993, hey, let's work on a horror game like this game, except it be on the PS1, which by that point the PS1 had just released. So in March 1999, 1996, they released Resident Evil 1. They followed up with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, which eventually got their remakes later. Now, by this point, they were actually doing pretty good. These three titles did well, but they did receive some controversy. And funny enough, the American releases did have more blood than the Japanese releases, and other countries too, because the Japanese release wasn't as brutal, but that is just a side thing. 2002 rolls by and they decide to remake the series, however, for the GameCube, and they were like, yeah, let's put this on the GameCube. Alright, and then they were like, at the same time of releasing it, they also released Resident Evil 4. Well, they were working on Resident Evil 4. Initially, it was supposed to have some weird guy, and you're in a mansion, and you're trying to survive, which I guess you do. And this was going to happen. However, they ended up changing it to third person view, specifically over the shoulder. Now, this turned out with Resident Evil 4 when it released, and this is how people remember Resident Evil 4. In 2009, they decided to make a sequel to Resident Evil 4, except they went even more action oriented. You see, with Resident Evil 4, it was very action oriented. You can tell. Resident Evil 5, though, would have a bigger emphasis on this than survival, and it turned out to be the case. However, Resident Evil 5 will not be on those platforms. It will not be on the GameCube. It was the first to actually release on the seventh generation of consoles, and it did. This meant online an ability to have. However, they still had offline split screen for it. And I guess there are other things about it. We all know about that boulder scene, but yeah, that's Resident Evil 5. Quickly after, specifically 3 years, they'd work on Resident Evil 6, which would be the first in the series to receive mixed reviews from critics and audience members. This was kind of a big deal, though it kind of wasn't, because it's probably not the best selling game in the series. However, it is one of the most best selling games in the series, actually, if you didn't know, despite its mixed reviews. In 2017, though, were also deciding, instead of going with the action oriented games they were doing up to that point, they decided to go for a more horrifying route. And this time, they would definitely do a good job of that. And it actually did well, better than others. Though this is true, Resident Evil 7 was actually not the most successful. In fact, Resident Evil 6 was more successful than it, surprisingly. And eventually, 2 years later, they ended up making remakes. And now we have Resident Evil Village, which everybody all knows by this point. And it's received some pretty decent reviews. Though this is true, I've never played Resident Evil Village, though I might play it later. As far as I'm aware, this is a pretty successful series and it's Capcom's biggest series ever. So there we go, guys. And today, I'm gonna be leaving and see you in the next video. Bye.